For a long time, I told myself the quiet meant survival. After I betrayed my marriage, my husband never touched me again. Not once. No anger, no accusations, just a complete withdrawal that felt colder than shouting ever could. We shared the same house, the same kitchen, the same last name, but emotionally, we lived on different planets. At first, I thought it was temporary. That time would soften things. That if I stayed long enough, proved myself long enough, something human would return. 18 years passed. By the time I retired, the silence had become normal. Too normal. The kind of quiet you stop questioning because questioning it hurts. That's why the doctor's office caught me off guard. It was supposed to be routine. A standard checkup for retired teachers. Blood work, imaging, the usual questions. I almost skipped it, honestly. I felt fine. Tired sometimes, but who isn't? The clinic smelled like disinfectant and old magazines. Sunlight leaked through the blinds, striping the walls in pale gold. I kept twisting the strap of my purse, not even realizing I was doing it. Dr. Evans sat across from me, scrolling through my chart. She wasn't alarmed, just focused. The kind of focus that makes your stomach tighten. She confirmed my age, asked about sleep, appetite, stress. Then she paused. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses and said, very carefully, "Susan, I need to ask you something a bit personal." My body tensed before my mind did. She asked whether my husband and I had maintained a normal, intimate relationship over the years. The question hit like a sudden drop in an elevator. I felt heat rush to my face. My chest tightened. I hadn't said those words out loud in nearly 2 decades. No intimacy, no touch, no closeness. Not since the summer our son left for college. I nodded slowly, barely trusting my voice. "No," I said. "Not for a long time." Dr. Evans didn't react the way I expected. No judgment, no surprise, just concern. That's when I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about my body. And as she continued explaining, I felt the past, everything I had buried, beginning to surface. Because the reason our life had gone silent wasn't random. It had a beginning. And once I allowed myself to remember that beginning, there was no stopping what came next. That question didn't just expose my marriage. It reopened a chapter I had spent 18 years pretending was closed. Before the silence, we had what people like to admire. My husband and I met in college, fell in love the uncomplicated way young people do, got married right after graduation and slid into adult life without much friction. He became an engineer. I taught English at a public high school. We raised our son together, paid our bills, took modest vacations, built something stable, not passionate, not thrilling, but dependable. When our son left for college, the house changed overnight. It wasn't the space that bothered me. It was the stillness. The absence of noise made everything else louder, the lack of conversation, the emotional distance we'd been ignoring for years. That's when Ethan arrived. He was new at the school, an art teacher, a few years younger than me, the kind of person who carried warmth into a room without trying. He noticed things, asked questions, listened when I answered. At first, it felt innocent. Conversations in the staff lounge, walks after school, coffee that lasted too long. I told myself it wasn't cheating. I told myself I deserved to feel seen. The attention filled something in me I hadn't realized was empty. And once it did, it became addictive. My husband sensed something, of course. He always did. "You've been working late a lot," he said one night from the couch, eyes still on the television. I brushed it off, lied easily. He didn't press. That silence should have stopped me. Instead, it emboldened me. The truth came out on a quiet afternoon by a lake. No dramatic confrontation, no raised voices. Just my husband and my son standing close enough to see everything they needed to see. The ride home felt endless. No music, no conversation, just the sound of consequences settling in. That night, my husband didn't yell. He sat down, lit a cigarette, and asked one question. "How long?" When I answered, he didn't react. He simply nodded like a man finalizing paperwork. Then he gave me two options: divorce, public, humiliating, final, or stay married in name only. For our son, for appearances, for stability. I chose to stay, not because I deserved forgiveness, because I was afraid of losing everything. That was the night our marriage stopped being a relationship and became a performance. I thought choosing to stay meant choosing safety. I didn't realize I had chosen a life where nothing could ever heal. After that night, something fundamental shifted in our house. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in a slow, methodical way that made it harder to notice until it was everywhere. My husband moved to the couch without explanation. Not angrily, not sadly, just quietly. Like a man rearranging furniture after deciding a room would never be used the same way again. We stopped sharing meals unless our son was home. Stopped asking about each other's days. Stopped existing as anything other than cooperative adults. From the outside, we still passed. At family gatherings, we stood close enough for photos. At holidays, we coordinated gifts. Friends would comment on how long we'd been together, how solid we seemed. I smiled every time. Inside the house, silence became a routine. I tried at first. Cooked his favorite meals, left small notes, asked questions that didn't demand emotional answers. He accepted everything politely, like kindness from a stranger. Months turned into years. Our son graduated, moved away, built his own life. The house got quieter. I told myself this was the price of my mistake. That endurance was the same thing as atonement. That if I stayed long enough, the punishment might eventually expire. It didn't. Instead, my body started speaking up. At first, it was small things, fatigue that sleep didn't fix, dizziness, a tightness in my chest I blamed on anxiety. Doctors ran tests, adjusted medications, reassured me. Then came the appointments that took longer, the ones where doctors reread charts, asked the same questions twice. Eventually, one of them mentioned something strange. Scarring, old surgical markers, things that shouldn't have been there. She asked if I'd ever had abdominal surgery. I laughed, said no, said I'd remember something like that. She didn't laugh back. That night, I asked my husband. We were sitting in the living room, the television on low volume. He didn't look at me when I spoke. "Have I ever had surgery?" I asked. The pause before he answered was long enough to change the air in the room. "Yes," he said finally. I felt cold. When you were hospitalized," he replied. I told him I didn't remember. He said he knew. That was the moment I understood something I had refused to accept for years. My husband wasn't just distant. He was guarding something. And whatever it was, it had been sitting between us the entire time. I thought the silence was punishment. I didn't realize it was protection from a truth I was never meant to uncover. The truth didn't come all at once. It never does. It came in fragments, in reluctant sentences, in explanations that felt practiced, like they'd been waiting years to be spoken. After my affair was exposed, I didn't just spiral emotionally. I collapsed. The shame, the fear, the realization of what I'd risked, it all hit at once. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped functioning. I was hospitalized. What I didn't know, what no one thought I needed to know, was what doctors discovered while I was there. I had been pregnant. The words felt unreal when my husband finally said them, like he was describing someone else's life. He told me the doctors were concerned about my mental state, about my health, about what another shock might do. So decisions were made while I was sedated, while I was considered unstable, without my consent. The pregnancy was terminated. I stared at him, waiting for the explanation to soften, for the justification to make it acceptable. It didn't. He said he was protecting our family, protecting our son from scandal, protecting me from public humiliation, protecting our marriage, what was left of it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went numb. Because the betrayal didn't feel loud. It felt surgical, clean, efficient. A choice about my body had been made without me. A life had been ended without my knowledge. And the man who made that choice still believes it was necessary. I asked him why he never told me. He said there was no point, that it couldn't be undone, that telling me would only add pain. That answer stayed with me longer than the truth itself, because it revealed something devastating. My husband didn't see me as someone who deserved agency anymore. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't an equal. I was a problem to be managed. And even then, I thought that was the end of the revelations. I was wrong, because the past wasn't finished with us yet. It was only setting the stage for something far worse. I thought losing my choice was the deepest violation. I had no idea the truth was still rearranging everything beneath my feet. The call came early in the morning. The kind of call that immediately tells you something is wrong before a single word is said. Our son had been in an accident, a serious one. A collision on a highway outside the city. Details were unclear. All we were told was to come quickly. The drive to the hospital felt unreal. My husband gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say that wouldn't break us open. When we arrived, everything moved fast. Doctors, nurses, consent forms, machines beeping in uneven rhythms. Our son had lost a dangerous amount of blood. Emergency surgery was unavoidable. As the medical team prepared, a nurse asked a question that felt routine. "What are the parents' blood types?" We answered automatically. She frowned slightly, checked the chart, asked again. Another nurse came in. Then a doctor. The room shifted. They explained carefully, clinically, as if distance could soften impact. Based on genetics, something didn't align. Two people with our blood types couldn't biologically produce a child with his. The words didn't land all at once. They hovered, waiting for meaning to catch up. My husband stared at the floor. I felt the walls closing in. Later, after surgery, after stabilization, our son asked to speak to us. He looked exhausted, pale, older than he should have. He told us he'd known for years. A quiet test during college, curiosity that turned into certainty. He said it didn't change how he saw his father. That love wasn't erased by biology. But I watched my husband's face as he listened. A man can survive many things. But learning that the life you built rests on a lie you never consented to, that fractures something deep. My husband didn't cry. He didn't speak. He simply nodded, thanked our son for his honesty, and stayed by his bedside every night until he was discharged. I stayed too, but I had never felt more distant from both of them, because I knew, and the truth was finally catching up to all of us. I thought the accident was the crisis. I didn't understand that the real damage had been waiting decades to surface. The answer didn't come from recent years. It came from a time I hadn't revisited in decades. Before the wedding, before the vows, before the version of myself I wanted to believe in. My husband finally asked the question he'd avoided for weeks. "Was it ever possible," he said slowly, "that he isn't mine?" I didn't answer immediately, because the memory was already there, sharp, undeniable, and horrifyingly clear. It was a night fueled by alcohol and fear, a moment I had labeled a mistake and buried beneath time. His closest friend, a man I never should have trusted myself around. The timeline aligned perfectly. The pregnancy, the math, the truth. My husband didn't shout when I told him. That hurt more than anger ever could. He sat down, put his face in his hands, and stayed like that for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but hollow. "I raised him," he said. "I loved him. I still do." Then he looked at me. "But my entire life has been built on something I didn't agree to." That sentence changed how I understood everything, because for years I thought my affair was the defining betrayal. It wasn't. The real fracture happened before we were even married. My husband realized he had given his loyalty, his future, his identity, to a foundation that was never honest. And yet, he never once blamed our son. That love remained intact. What shattered was his sense of self. I spent years believing one mistake defined my punishment. I didn't realize the first lie had shaped every life that followed. After our son recovered and returned home, something strange happened. Life didn't return to normal. It simply continued. My husband stayed close to our son, drove him to appointments, sat quietly in hospital waiting rooms, listened more than he spoke. I existed nearby, not excluded, not embraced, just present. We lived under the same roof again, but not as a couple, not even as former partners trying to find peace. We were two people bound by history, obligation, and a shared love for the same child. One evening, months after the accident, my husband asked me to sit with him at the kitchen table. No anger in his voice, no tension, just calm. He told me he had made a decision. He wasn't going to divorce me, not out of forgiveness, not out of hope, but because separation would only add chaos to something already fragile. He said we would remain a family publicly, attend events together, show up for our son and eventually our grandchild. Privately, though, he was done. No reconciliation, no rebuilding, no more searching for answers. "I'm not holding on to resentment anymore," he said, "but I'm not holding on to us either." That was the moment I understood something painful. Indifference isn't the absence of emotion. It's the decision to stop investing in one. From that night on, he stopped engaging entirely. No debates, no reminders of the past, no punishment, just distance that felt permanent. I tried once, only once, to ask if there was any chance of change. He shook his head gently. "Some things don't heal," he said. "They just teach you how to live around them." I used to think hatred was the end of love. I learned that quiet acceptance lasts much longer. A few months later, my husband told me he needed space, not from our son, from the life he had built. He rented a small place outside the city, somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knew him as a husband or a father. He packed lightly. No dramatic goodbye, no final argument. Before he left, he said something I think about often. "Time doesn't erase truth," he said. "It just carries it forward." I didn't ask him to stay. I didn't ask for forgiveness, because at that point, neither would have mattered. Now my days are slower. I take walks in the morning, read in the afternoons, sit with memories I once refused to face. People sometimes ask if I regret staying. That's not the right question. Regret assumes there was a correct outcome. What I regret is believing silence meant healing. What I regret is confusing endurance with repair. What I regret is learning too late that honesty delayed becomes harm. My husband and I still speak. Briefly, cordially. We are united where it matters. But we are no longer a story with an ending. We are a lesson still unfolding. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Some mistakes don't explode your life immediately. They wait. They let you build routines, memories, identities. And then, when you're older, when you finally have the space to understand them, they return, not to punish you, but to be felt fully. Some truths don't destroy you when they happen. They wait until you're strong enough to finally carry them.